Okay, up next we have homegrown Dan Shields. He's going to be presenting looks like we're going to be doing some Polkadot blockchains with Substrate. You ready, Dan?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you see me? I might be frozen on my end.
You are frozen as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to do a reset here, and so I'll be right back so we can get that stream going.
Okay. While we have just a second to get his technology reset, we'll run through a couple of this afternoon's activities. The virtual castle is closed as of now, so holy schmoly, it was busy in there today. But we have a lot of other cool things happening. The chess tournament is at 5 o'clock. We do have a grandmaster, or excuse me, an international master who will be doing commentating with Josh Lapidus, our very own. And there may even be some interesting, call them highlighted spotlight matches that are happening. You're welcome to tune into the live stream for commentating on things that are happening in the chess tournament. So that will be happening this evening at 5 to 7 p.m. Don't forget the live stream DJ Chill Room. That's twitch.tv/DJ Chill Room. That's happening all the time. So background music, mood music for just doing your coding and building your project. It's really pretty cool stuff. They've integrated the art and the music, which leads me to the virtual art gallery at CryptoVoxels and the art auction at OpenSea. So go to ETHDenver.com, check out the entertainment tab, and make sure that you hit those things today. We've got several more days of time with these things open, so don't feel like you have to be in any rush. Normally it's Sunday, and we're winding down ETHDenver typically because it's usually a weekend event. And here we are with 5 more days. So it's going to be a marathon. You guys ready? We're good. Okay, Dan's back.
Back unfrozen.
Unfrozen Dan Shields. We pulled a Return of the Jedi and got him out of the carbonite.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be here, John. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, my name is Dan Shields, and I've been at ETHDenver since the very beginning here. I've been a huge fanboy, and I've been so, I guess, blessed to have such great people here in the Denver area to work with, because in my mind, ETHDenver is like the cream of the crop of all things like cryptocurrency or blockchain event-wise. Now, I think Innovation Festival we've heard thrown around is the word. This is the place to be. So thanks for joining me on it. And just so you guys know a little bit more about me, I'm here in Colorado, and the local community that is all kind of involved in the cryptocurrency and blockchain space is Cryptorado. So that's where I would invite you guys, if you're here local, to reach out to me. I'd love to get to know you. We do fun stuff in person when we can, and online for the most part this year, but I think we'll get outside some more together soon. But with that, what I'm really here today, what I'm really excited to tell you about is Polkadot in particular, and building with Substrate, which is a framework to be able to build blockchains that hopefully can get you set up on Polkadot. So I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation now. Let's see if y'all can see it. It looks like yes. Rock on. So building blockchains with Polkadot, or building blockchains that are ready for Polkadot with Substrate, right? And I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of an overview. But before we really dive into it, I think it's good to have a quick review of what is a blockchain? If we're going to build this thing, what are the components that go into it? So the first and most important thing is blockchain is really just a database, right? That is the chain, right? It's just a data structure. And it has some peculiarities, right? We link to the one that was last in the chain to make sure that nothing has changed in the history, but that's all it really is. All the rest is to ensure that it is immutable over time, right? That's what blockchains are supposed to do. So we have a blockchain, and then how do we secure that this is immutable across multiple nodes on this blockchain network, well, we got to have some kind of peer-to-peer networking layer to make this happen, right? We also need some way to come to an agreement, right, consensus over who can author blocks and how they get added into this data store, right? And finally, then if there is any contest of any kind, we need to be able to choose which fork of this database we want to follow. What is the truth, right, is over time. And then we need to be able to ingest new transactions, or as we call them, extrinsics, things outside the database, and get them intrinsic inside the database. And all of this revolves around a state transition function, the runtime, right? This is the thing that is what we're operating on to get the new present state in each new block. So that's blockchains, right? That's the core of them. And Parity, the company that I'm working with, and particularly is behind the Substrate framework that we'll go into, has built a lot of blockchains. Like you guys might be aware of was Parity Ethereum and is now Open Ethereum. And this is one of the, I believe behind Geth, the second most popular by far implementation of an Ethereum node. Also are the guys behind Parity Bitcoin. And I believe there's also a Zcash implementation that we have available. And then finally, what we're here to talk about today, at least somewhat, is Polkadot, right? So there's a lot of work that has gone in to understanding how to build this blockchain mechanism and all the parts that you need for very many different systems. And then in building Polkadot, Substrate emerged, right? They've built so many blockchains here at Parity, so why don't we build a framework to help other people build blockchains themselves? And I don't want you guys to miss it. I'm going to be talking specifically about Substrate, but Polkadot itself is really interesting, and I'll talk a little bit more of that later. And so will Dan Forbes here at 3 p.m., so just about an hour's time from now as well. So don't miss that one. Stick around. But Substrate, let's focus back on that, is an open source, modular, and extensible framework for building blockchains. And if you guys are familiar in the Rust ecosystem, because this is what Substrate is built in, you might have seen other frameworks for building websites. So specifically like Actix is for web servers, Rocket and U are things like for websites, right? This in particular, right, we're talking about is for building blockchains. So this framework, what is core? What really makes Substrate what it is and what comes with it? It provides here all of the core components that you need to build this blockchain we discussed, that blockchain base database layer, as well as the networking layer to make everything connect between your nodes, this transaction queue and sorting and processing transactions as they're coming in, and a consensus engine. And on top of that, the most important part that I think we can talk about and what we really want to dive into is this library of runtime modules. So all of these things that Substrate provides for you are totally modularized and customizable. But the key when we're thinking about what makes your blockchain special, more than whatever is out there already that you could just go and fork off of, right, is this runtime. What makes your blockchain unique? So here's kind of a general overview of what a Substrate node looks like, what components come inside of it, right? And as we're looking at this node from the outside world, we have an ingest. So this is all these extrinsic things to this node come in through primarily an RPC server. This is what you might be familiar with in the Ethereum space. You've got a JSON endpoint that you're talking to these nodes and trying to put things in, like, for instance, the transaction pool, or maybe you want to query for something that happens to be in the blockchain database. So this is what we're looking for in there. And then from this runtime that's talking to this transaction pool and then deciding upon how it wants to go about processing these new blocks into the blockchain database, it also needs to be able to communicate out into the world through what we use as libp2p networking. At least this is the default module to be having that peer-to-peer networking stack. And then when we're communicating then with the nodes on the network, we can come to some consensus and then finally ingest and make that block stick throughout the network. And Also, that's included is a Prometheus by default telemetry server, so that you can monitor these nodes really actively and get some real-time useful information through, for instance, Grafana, if you guys are interested in data viz for what your node is doing. So really, though, I want to focus on this last part. So we're talking about this little highlighted thing in green. This is the blocks and the block store itself and the runtime that's operating on that block store. Because as a runtime engineer, this is the thing that's the special sauce that's going to make your blockchain unique, right? So the runtime defines the possible state transitions and the APIs in which you can initiate those state transitions. So specifically, you're defining all of the things that you can and cannot do. So in like smart contracts, right, this is effectively your public interface would be these APIs. And these state transitions are what you're going to go ahead and produce at the end, right, when everything is validated and cement in a block. So when these things are validated correctly, now they sit in a block, well, when we come to consensus about it. The definition of the runtime here is also really interestingly an element within the storage itself. So to give you a sense, like in this diagram here, the runtime, all of it is contained within a block somewhere in the blockchain. And in fact, this enables a really interesting property that we can get into, is you can have forkless runtime upgrades. So one very novel thing that Substrate introduces is the ability to, at any time as part of the runtime, you're able to initiate a runtime upgrade. And this will actually be written into the block store, and everyone on the network will come to consensus about that new block and realize that it's a runtime upgrade and start operating with it. So it's a pretty amazing, powerful tool here. You don't have to necessarily force everyone out there on the network to upgrade manually themselves. And when it comes to runtime stuff, at least, you can push out to the entire network after they come to consensus on it. So for instance, in Polkadot, and potentially Mr. Dan Forbes can talk a little bit about that, we have a governance system that comes to consensus around this before any runtime gets initiated. But however you want to do it, this is totally up to you. How do you customize it and how you can use this interesting feature. And then, so all of these cool things, how do you access this? And this is where Frame comes into play. This is our modular framework that allows you to develop this runtime in a very easy way and a whole bunch of helpers to make that really streamlined. So what is Frame? What is this thing, right? This is all the things that you can plug and play into what it makes your blockchain special, this runtime specialization. So it has a trait configuration interface. If you guys are familiar with Rust, here effectively we are abstracting all of these interfaces through traits, through Rust traits. So as you get into the code, you'll see this come up quite a lot. This provides a whole bunch of storage abstractions. So when you want to write something into the block store, you're going to be going through these trait interfaces in your runtime modules to be able to do things in a pretty seamless and intuitive way once you start learning about it. It also provides an interface to report errors and events. So you might, from the Solidity world, you might be publishing out events in your smart contracts. Here in your runtimes, you can do the same kind of stuff for the network to become aware about things that are going on in the runtime as it's operating. And this is where you'll be able to specify the dispatchable extrinsics, right? So you can think of them as transactions, stuff coming in, ingesting into the runtime and being processed over time. You can specify these here. So you can also then very easily create these public interfaces through public accessible functions, as well as hooks into that RPC layer that we have available. And then there's a plethora of primitives. So things that you really want to be able to access, for instance, who is sending something and ways to work around validating, like is this a signed message? Or do you have some authentication and ability to, for instance, send funds from one account to another? So that's all baked in there in those primitives, as well as scale, which is our encoding specifically to store things deep into the database. This is effectively a binary format. We've got really handy helpers for you to do things like serialize and deserialize into that particular codec. So that's all available in Frame. And if we have enough time, I can show you a little bit about where those are located for you. But this is the core of which you, as you're coming into Substrate, will get a lot of experience about learning what's out there and how to interface with palettes. So these are totally all-in-one plug-and-play modules that you can put into your runtime. And so they're all based on Frame. They use very similar syntax. Frame v1, you'll see we use a whole bunch of declarative macros, the macros that have the little exclamation point in Rust, for declaring your storage, declaring your errors, declaring the specific things inside your runtime, the functions that you want to run and the public interfaces to them. Those are all supported in Frame v1. And Frame v2 is right on the horizon. It's going to be launched here, I believe, officially in Substrate 3.0 in the next few weeks, which, fingers crossed, that'll be really exciting. It simplifies some of this macro syntax and makes it much more idiomatic Rust. It's very much more simplified. But regardless, these palettes, right? This, you can decide what you want to plug into. So for instance, we're looking at this diagram. Maybe you want some particular consensus engines. So in this example, you've got Aurora and Grandpa that are coming together out of those two that will decide on block production and then finally block finalization. So who gets to decide on what blocks should be decided on? And then finally, how do those get cemented and immutable over time? And then things like, if you're playing around, testing, maybe you want a pseudo palette. This is effectively admin level. You can do whatever you'd like. You can pretend you're anybody on the system and initiate whatever you'd like. So this has been purposefully removed via a runtime upgrade in Polkadot, so that only governance, for instance, as you can see, the things that aren't selected in this example, like elections and democracy, are actually highlighted and selected in Polkadot to enable this collective decision-making around runtime upgrades. There's no pseudo, right? But you can also do things like you plug in assets and have treasury management and do things like have collective decision-making on there. So you decide what you want your blockchain runtime to have into it, and we've got a lot of palettes to get you started, as well as there's a great and expanding open source community that is developing these things out there in the wild. One popular library is the Open Runtime Module libraries that are out there, ORML, you'll see on GitHub. And so if you don't look directly in the Substrate ones that come included in our code base, there's plenty more to look from and lots more to develop. So hopefully I've sold you on like the idea. If you want to build a blockchain, Substrate is probably the best tool to do it, I would say, hands down. So substrate.dev is a place where you're going to learn a lot more than just why you want to do this stuff, but how you can actually dig in. We've got tutorials that are there, and we've got, I believe, 6 or 7 different ones to get you started. And then once you've got those under your belt, go ahead and check out recipes. This is much more targeted, specific things and examples to really do more advanced functionality than just understand how Substrate is structured. And then every week, and Dan Forbes leads this right now, is we have a Substrate seminar. So this is more for practitioners, people who have seen and been working with Substrate and done some tutorials, maybe played with some of these recipes, and want to know what's the present state of the art that's going on and how to get in, sink their teeth in deeper. Also, ETHDenver, we've got a lot of great stuff. So if you go to my slides, which I believe I put up on Twitch and I put now in the ETHDenver Discord as well, there's this great resource guide. There's a lot of information about what else you can get access to here specifically for ETHDenver, including our bounties. So if you aren't decided yet on what you want to work on, we've got open track bounties specifically to anything that involves Substrate or Ink, our smart contracting language that we're developing at Parity. Some really awesome stuff and pretty much free form. Like I'm excited to see what you guys want to do more than have you focus on one particular thing to tackle. So check out the ETHDenver guide. There's some really awesome stuff there. And connect with me, right? I'm going to be around pretty much all the rest of the week. I'm going to be helping as a mentor, hanging out on the Vertly platform, specifically for ETHDenver and the Discord as well. you can hit me at this email here. I'm on Discord, and then really I prefer Matrix. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, distributed federated system to be able to connect to people over the Matrix protocol. So that's the one you should hit me at. But I'll be around anywhere. Hit me wherever it's convenient for you. So with that, I've talked a lot about, okay, you can build a blockchain, right? But one thing I haven't really talked about is, okay, you've got this thing, how do you make sure that it is secure and distributed, right? Because right now all I've got is a single node that is sitting there processing blocks all on its own, right? I want to have a distributed network across the world and make sure that it's rock solid, immutable, and it guard against attack. So Substrate enables you to modularly, very easily, become what we call a parachain or a parathread of Polkadot. So if you decide to go this route, you can plug into Polkadot and have Polkadot not only become this distributed network for you on your behalf, but also help you ensure that the validity of your state transitions, not just your state, but the state transitions from block to block are valid. So instead of, I guess the right way to think about this is a cloud service provider might provide something like infrastructure as code. And here, Polkadot allows you to immediately plug into a very robust, very secure blockchain network that is bigger than you are, and also provides these security guarantees that a distributed network that you would have to bootstrap yourself otherwise would have. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with Polkadot and Parachains, and we're just starting in this world. So I invite you guys to play with Substrate, understand it, because this is the gateway into what I believe is a much better future for interoperable blockchains all over the place. And to hear more about this, talk with Dan Forbes. He's going to be presenting at 3 o'clock here, so in just about 40 minutes from now. And that, I think, is about all I've got for my slides, but I wanted to give you a brief introduction to what you can look for here on some of the resources that we have available online. So wiki.polkadot.network, in particular, as you guys are learning about concepts, there's some really great technical explanations here that are all documented out for you to go ahead and look at, because this is a big thing to grasp. The vision of what Polkadot wants to become, I think, is really something that Dan will touch on, but it gets dense very quickly. So check out, we've got docs here that are available for you. And then for Substrate in particular, substrate.dev is where you're going to want to be going to find all of these resources that I was mentioning. We've got tutorials, we've got a knowledge base that is specific to Substrate development, these recipes for the examples, as well as an API reference. And if you guys have seen anything in docs before from Rust docs, this is all compiled from this the Substrate code core base that's all written in Rust. So these are auto-documented in the core, the core code, which you can find here on GitHub. So if you go to github/ParityTech/Substrate, to give you a sense, this is all of those things that I was talking about that you can plug and play. This is the library that you can compose into a Substrate-based blockchain. And in particular, if you guys are looking around at this, I want to highlight a couple of things that are here. Those palettes that I mentioned, those all live within this frame directory here. So substrate/frame, this is where you're going to find these things like Aurora, authorship, the balances palette, things like democracy and elections. So those pluggable modules you'll find in here, as well as we were talking about these primitives. So a lot of the things that are associated that you might need to get, like for instance, arithmetic, if you want to be able to play with that scale encoding, you're going to look in here for some of that stuff. And of course, your first stop is going to be these docs, and you can do some great search about whatever it might be, keywords that you want to be looking into and learn about the palettes. For instance, balances could be something you'd be looking for, right? So we can look for all the stuff that's associated with it. And then for an example, right, if you're looking here in the Substrate code base, under the binary directory, we've got a node template, which is basically the bare minimum that you can use to get started. That's a fully running, has all the modules you need to start running that node right there. And then kind of the whole like, the whole kitchen plus the everything you could possibly need. In fact, more than you probably would ever want is in this node, just to make sure that everything could be plugged in to your blockchain that you'd want to. For this template, though, I would encourage you, under the Substrate Developer Hub, we've got the Substrate node template. This is the same source, but it's been pulled out so that you can use it as a template directly very easily. So if you want to get started, go ahead and use this template and fork it over and get yourself started. And you'll find all of the documentation in these tutorials really very helpful as you're moving through and progressing along your journey in Substrate. So I think with that, that's all I got for sharing. And I'm hoping that I can get some questions from you guys in the Twitch. So I'm going to be looking there now, and hopefully we can help you either now, presently, or also on Discord. And so join me there after this talk so we can get you set up. So I'm looking, is there any questions that have come up?
Yeah, I've got one on the screen right now if you want to take a look.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Can we do NFT projects on Polkadot Open Hackathon? Yes, absolutely. And in particular, there's some really interesting work going on Kusama, the cousin network of Polkadot, if you will. And yes, as Dan Forbes is saying, check out Kusama. They're in the makerspace. They've got a large set of NFTs that are built on Kusama that you potentially buy in the auction that's going on a little bit later in the, when is that, John? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of
Yeah,
my head.
it's coming up. Check out ethdenver.com/schedule, and you'll see stuff there. So the CryptoVoxels area is full of a lot of these Kusama NFTs. Can you build them yourself? Yes. RMRK, I believe, is the remark, is where these NFTs, a lot of them are living right now. And Bruno, I believe, gave a talk earlier that you can look back on to go ahead and refresh on some of the innovations that are happening in the NFT world in the Polkadot space. Cool. So hopefully that helped. So now I'm seeing from Justin from NewsCypher here. It's what does it feel like to throw down the gauntlet and do a Polkadot talk at an ETH conference? So I'd say it's great. I love this. You know, I've never been a maximalist for any particular one thing or the other. The thing I am a maximalist about is the decentralized web community. And I think that ETHDenver really embodies this. Sure, in the namesake, it's about Ethereum, but really I think that this is about building innovative products that help bring about a better world, right? And the technology is great, and wherever it is, I think, so here's my opinion, is that Polkadot really is about building bridges, right? It's really about enabling you to connect to other blockchains that live out there in the world, whether they're built on Substrate or not. And I envision a future where there is no competitive space. It's really about us all having the optimized blockchain to do just what we need. So Ethereum is one, definitely, and connecting through Polkadot to others that do cool stuff. For instance, like we say NFTs, maybe that'd be the next one to be its own chain. So we're looking at another question here. Party started an ETH community. We love the ETH community. Oh yeah, like for sure. I don't see there any direct competition. It's about being collaborative here to me. So Cosmos and Polkadot, they seem to have similar aims. Can I provide a quick summary of the differences? And I can tell you what, I should know more about Cosmos, but I'm relatively new to Cosmos. So that's something I'm going to be learning more about as I move forward here in my journey. But I definitely got to say I'm still mostly in the brain space of Polkadot because it's my job. I got to. So where can you buy a Polkadot hoodie? This one came from the Gitcoin Hello World Hackathon. So you couldn't buy it. You could get it, though, for participating. We'll have more events, much like we're at now for ETHDenver, where you can get swag. And we have swag available that's, I believe, you can come to our booth in the virtual castle, and I'll post a link in the Discord as well for people to get some free Polkadot swag, because we got some good stuff for sure. But yeah, guys, so I'm excited, and if anything, for the opportunity to collaborate with the Ethereum community more and more in whatever you guys are doing. And Substrate in particular really, I think, is an interesting thing for anybody who's interested in getting outside of just the smart contracting space. The cool part, I think, that is so powerful about Substrate is it enables you to build your own specific runtime instead of deciding that the EVM is the one runtime that everyone needs to use. So if you want to do something that the EVM is kind of about, or Solidity might not be the right tool for, you might be able to make your own perfect tool with Substrate. So I'm looking, will there be a Polkadot to Ethereum bridge? Absolutely. So if you want to see some of the first bits of this, I believe Frontier is the right place to go. And in the Discord, I'll be making sure I put up links to all this stuff. So you guys are awesome. I'm glad to be here. I think I'm running out of time. And yeah, we'll pay you in some swag to hack with Substrate and Polkadot.